Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. Now, I know lots of you, lovely listeners, are from the USA. And I know from our conversations in my Facebook community, the Living a Nordic Life Facebook group, if you're not there, come and join us, and the messages that you send me and the emails that we share, I talk to you, you talk to me, that lots of you have Scandinavian heritage. So I want to talk to you about 6 US cities where Scandinavian culture thrives. Now, if you have Scandinavian heritage, there's probably quite a good chance that you live near one of them or you know about them. But if you're listening to this and you live in the US and you're really craving a little bit of Nordic culture, then this is the place to start. I'm going to tell you about the places that are the most active, let's say, with Nordic heritage, Scandinavian heritage and Scandinavian culture. Now, despite the small populations of Scandinavian countries, Scandinavian immigrants have had a lasting mark on America. Between 1825 and 1920, more than 3 million Scandinavians emigrated. They left Scandinavia and they went to live in other places. And more than 95% of those went to the USA. Now, can you imagine what it was like here in Scandinavia back then? I mean, even in the 1920s, the populations were still tiny. In Norway, our population is only about 5.5 million, and it's a big place. So there are places where it is fairly sparsely populated, I have to say. I mean, I think everywhere is sparsely populated because I'm from southern England, where it's very busy and there's a lot of people. 70-odd million people in a very small space. But back then it must have been devastating probably for the people that were left behind. But like immigrants everywhere, they kind of honed in on the places that seemed most like home, like Minnesota and Wisconsin, that look geographically very much like Scandinavia. And they built communities. They preserved their traditions, because of course they did, and maybe some of them were a little bit homesick as well. And they shared local cultures, shaped local cultures. Today, several US cities still celebrate Nordic heritage in vibrant ways, and I know that it's very important as well to keep those things alive. These cities are incredibly proud of their Scandinavian culture and heritage, and celebrate festivals, maintain cultural institutions, and keep Scandinavian customs living. From Minnesota to Missouri, Nordic influence can be seen in the food, the architecture, and events that take place year after year. So should we have a look at 6 places in the USA where Scandinavian culture still thrives? Let's. Maybe you live near them, or maybe you live in them, in which case you could send me a message and tell me about them. The first one is Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota, and it's the heart of Nordic America, really, because Minnesota has the highest percentage of Scandinavian descendants in the US. That's according to the Minnesota Daily. 43% of Minnesotans with multiple ancestry, because they're not everybody is pure Scandinavian, but they identify as Scandinavians, Norwegians, Swedes and Danes. And most of them settled there in the 19th century. Their influence remains strong in the Twin Cities. The American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis showcases Swedish history and art. That's important, isn't it? And the Norwegian American Historical Association preserves Norwegian contributions to American life. Traditional Scandinavian crafts and folk music thrive at local events. Each June, Svenskarnas that's Swedes' Day, celebrates Swedish culture. It features folk dancing, music, and traditional foods. Norwegian culture is also honoured through events like lutefisk dinners. That's towards Christmas, isn't it? We do eat lutefisk in Norway, but not very often in my part of Norway, I have to say. I'm down in the south and we eat a lot of pork. It's definitely pig farming area. So there's a lot of pork eaten at Christmas. And we don't really have these lutefisk dinners because we don't need to. People will have them as a family meal, but it's not a big kind of shared event. Maybe occasionally, or you might go to a restaurant for it. Something like that, but not quite to the extent that you do in the USA. But I guess that's how it is if something is a little bit of a treat or perhaps a bit of a delicacy. And I know that there are times when it's hard to get lutefisk there. Not here. It's in the supermarkets everywhere. Pretty much all the time, actually, I have to say. It's 10 May. Norwegian Constitution Day on the 17th of May is also important, with parades and the same kind of events that we have here in Norway. Everything is closed here. It's a national day, so, it's on a public holiday. So nobody goes to work unless you work in a hot dog restaurant or a hot dog stand or an ice cream stand, which do a roaring trade, I might add. But there are parades in every town and every village. We used to go to our local town, which is about 10 miles away, I suppose, because my children were at an international school there. But they've since moved, and my youngest is at the village school, which is just about 190 kids. But they still have their own little parade that walks through the village and about a mile and a half up to the church, where there's a celebration. So we always take part in that. So what's to remember if you're going to Minnesota, if you're going to Minneapolis? Well, if you go in winter, so if you want to go and experience a little bit of, kind of Scandinavian, Nordic winter culture, you need to be prepared for the cold. Extreme cold. Rather like Scandinavia, I might add. You're going to need layers, insulated boots and proper winter gear, which are essential really for exploring comfortably. Otherwise you're going to be cold. And then it's not going to be fun, is it? But don't let winter put you off. Get out there anyway. Number 2, Decorah in Iowa, a Norwegian-American stronghold. Decorah is a really small town. It's really small. I haven't been there myself, but I do know how little it is, and I'm surprised at just how small it is and how important Scandinavian culture is to it, because it's got this deep Norwegian heritage. Many of its residents have roots tracing back to Norwegian settlers. And the town is home to the Vesterheim Norwegian American Museum. Now, if you know anything about Norwegian culture and you've searched for any kind of events or anything like that in the US, the Vesterheim Museum will come up. And a lot of Norwegians and Scandinavians generally here in Scandinavia take part in events or host events at the museum. It's important. But this museum holds the largest collection of Norwegian American artefacts in the US. It showcases Viking ship replicas, traditional Norwegian folk art, and historic immigrant stories. I bet a lot of those are very interesting. And the museum helps to preserve Norwegian culture through exhibits and educational programmes. It's just what I was saying. Learning how to cook, Norwegian style, rosemaling, bunad making, all of these things that are so important and are very alive here and passed down from generation to generation, so you probably don't think about it too much. But it's very important to keep it alive if you have Scandinavian heritage. Moreover, every summer, Decorah hosts Nordic Fest. And this festival celebrates Norwegian traditions with dancing, crafts, and authentic Nordic cuisine. Events include rosemaling. That's that classic Norwegian painting on wood. You often see it on plates and bowls and things like that. Although you do get it on furniture, in old houses, really old houses, around the door frames and the architraves. You know, that bit of wood that meets the ceiling. All kinds of things. And it's very typical Norwegian folk art. Each region has its own particular style. And it's all done in very earthy, kind of dark colours. But there's also a torchlight parade and a lutefisk eating contest. I'd have to see that. That rivals a contest in my own local home of Dorset in southern England, where there is a nettle eating competition. Yes, I kid you not. And I think they can eat an awful lot of nettles, some people. I don't think I'd want to try it. I do love nettles, but I'm not going to eat them raw. I'm definitely going to cook them. So what to remember if you do go to Decorah? It's a really small town with limited space. So make sure that if you're going to book a hotel or an Airbnb, you do it early before Nordic Fest. And it's actually best to reserve rooms months in advance. But also be prepared for some hilly terrain. Comfortable walking shoes are recommended for exploring the town and festival events. I think you want to do that anyway. I don't think high heels or flip-flops or slides are really the thing to be exploring, and are they? Be comfortable. You can still look stylish. Number 3 is St. Louis, Missouri. And this is maybe a slightly lesser known Scandinavian outpost. St. Louis is not famous for its Scandinavian heritage, but it does have a small and very active Nordic community. Swedish, Norwegian and Danish immigrants contributed to the city's cultural landscape. The Swedish Council of St. Louis promotes Swedish traditions through events like Midsummer and Lucia Fest. Those are at 2 opposite parts of the year, literally 6 months apart. Midsummer is 23rd of June, or thereabouts, depending if you are Swedish or Norwegian. If you're Swedish, it's the closest weekend, and if you're Norwegian, it's the 23rd. And Lucia Fest, which is the middle of December. So those 2 things are terribly, terribly Nordic. These celebrations feature flower crowns, folk music, and candlelight processions. You can guess which one is which, can't you? The council also organises Scandinavian film screenings and language workshops. The city also has a few Scandinavian Lutheran churches. These churches historically served Nordic immigrants and continue to honour Scandinavian customs. Occasionally there are Viking-themed exhibits and Nordic craft fairs. They take place in the local museums. So, number 4, Seattle, Washington. And this is the Pacific Northwest Nordic hub. Now, I have a lot of friends, and Andre, my partner, who's Norwegian, has a lot of family near Seattle, actually. So that's the place I always think about when I think of people with Nordic heritage living in the US. I always think of Seattle, because that's where our friends and family are. So hi, everyone, if you're listening. Seattle's Ballard neighbourhood has strong Scandinavian roots. In the early 1900s, Swedish, Norwegian and Danish immigrants worked in the fishing and shipbuilding industries. How natural is that, from coming from Scandinavia to working in the shipping and fishing? And their cultural influence remains visible today. The National Nordic Museum in Ballard tells the story of Scandinavian immigration. It houses Viking artefacts, folk costumes, and exhibits on modern Nordic innovation. The museum also hosts language classes and lectures on Scandinavian history. Seattle itself celebrates Nordic culture with annual events. There's Viking Fest, with reenactments and feasts, Julefest, of course, we have those here. bringing traditional Scandinavian Christmas festivities, including glögg, that's mulled wine, and the julebord. That is, well, it translates literally as Christmas table, but it's a Christmas buffet, and it always has the same things on it. It's always a selection of cold and cured meats, and usually things like roast pork rib, which is cut up into little squares with crispy crackling. Love that. Special Christmas meatballs, and then there'll be lots of different salads, and of course the cake table. I hope they have a cake table. It's not a Norwegian celebration without a cake table. Perish the thought. Seattle is not just famous for its Nordic heritage, but also its rain. It sounds like here. At the time of recording this, actually, we've had a lot of warm weather. It's April, it's the middle of April. We've had a lot of warm weather, and then suddenly it started raining. And we have about a week of rain forecast. And Norway actually is quite wet a lot of the time. That's why it's so green. So Seattle sounds like home. And according to this Seattle weather blog, the city averages 30.34 inches of precipitation every year. Eek. A vast majority falls as rain instead of snow. Sometimes you want the snow, don't you? Because it's actually dry. Well, it's dry for a bit until it melts. But if you're going to go there, don't count on sunny weather. Make sure that you pack waterproof clothing and comfortable walking shoes to explore. Otherwise, you're going to be wet and feel uncomfortable. Always dress for the weather. Number 5 is Chicago in Illinois. And it has an historic Swedish neighbourhood, Andersonville. Anderson sounds so Scandinavian, doesn't it? Of course it does. Ville, maybe not quite so much. But it's a neighbourhood in Chicago that was founded by Swedish immigrants in the 19th century. And it remains a centre for Swedish American culture today. There are Swedish bakeries, Swedish restaurants and cultural sites that keep Nordic traditions alive. The Swedish American Museum preserves Swedish history in America, and it features exhibits on early Swedish settlers, folk art and immigration stories, like many of the others. The museum also hosts workshops on Swedish crafts and language lessons. Andersonville's Midsummer Festival brings traditional Swedish celebrations to Chicago. It includes a maypole dance, Swedish food, and live folk music. The neighbourhood also celebrates St. Lucia's Day with candlelit processions and choral performances. Oh, it just sounds like Scandinavia. I mean, if you could get to any of these places, it's wonderful. Midsummer especially. I love midsummer. It's all flowers and daisies and flower crowns and lovely food and being outside and bonfires on the beach and hot dogs and daylight until midnight, and then we have 2 hours of darkness, and then it's daytime again. I love it. Number 6 is Minot in North Dakota. And that's home to America's largest Scandinavian festival. Now, I know that there are a lot of people with Norwegian heritage in North Dakota. And I'm sure I read somewhere a while ago, actually, that it's about 33%. It's a very high proportion. So, with its strong Scandinavian heritage and a high percentage of Norwegian and Icelandic descendants, the city is best known for hosting Norsk Høstfest. That's North America's largest Scandinavian festival. And Høst, that's the autumn, so you can guess when that's going to be. It features Nordic music, dance and cuisine, and guests can experience Viking reenactments. I love a bit of a reenactment. They're so much fun, aren't they? We go to late summer Viking market, actually, at a place called Bora, which is Scandinavia's biggest Viking burial ground. And they turned some of it used to be a trading post as well, they've recently discovered, but they turned some of it into this market, and they have Viking reenactments. It's just so much fun. It's a lot of shouting and cheering and swords clashing. Nobody gets injured, don't worry. But it's great fun if you can ever go to one. They're just wonderful. But there are also traditional craft demonstrations at Høstfest and Scandinavian storytelling. Norwegian waffles, Swedish meatballs and Danish pastries fill the festival grounds. And no doubt the smell as well. How lovely. You can always smell waffles and pancakes, can't you? A long way off. And I hope they serve them with strawberry jam and sour cream, which is how we eat them here. Minot Scandinavian Heritage Park celebrates Nordic countries with full-scale replicas of historic buildings. It includes a Norwegian stave church, and it does look amazing, the Norwegian stave church, I have to say. A Swedish Dala horse and a Finnish sauna. The park is a year-round reminder of the area's deep Nordic ties. And if you're going there in the autumn or the winter, remember that North Dakota's winters can be brutal. So prepare for heavy snowfall and below freezing temperatures. Also, Minot is a smaller city with limited public transport. So if you want to get about, the best way is to rent a car and explore the area, and you can attend events comfortably. That means you can go anywhere, isn't it? It's really, brilliant. So, why is Scandinavian heritage so prominent in the US? Well, it's because Scandinavian immigrants, particularly from Norway, Sweden and Denmark, arrived in large numbers during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Many of them sought better economic opportunities and farmland, leading them to settle in the Midwest, where the climate and landscapes made them feel just like home. It must have still been hard, though, because there would have been an awful lot of uncertainty, wouldn't there? Packing your chest, because everybody had a wooden chest, often painted with rosa marling, that they would take on the ship with them. And there was a huge amount of uncertainty because they wouldn't have been able to look at pictures of the place. They would have just been told, yep, this is a good place to go, let's go and try it. Are Scandinavian languages still spoken in the US? I know they are. And while most Scandinavian Americans today speak English, some older generations and heritage groups still use Norwegian, Swedish or Danish. Language preservation programs and Scandinavian clubs help teach these languages to new generations. Many communities also offer cultural workshops and events where attendees can practice speaking and learning Scandinavian languages. If you're just starting, actually, a good place to start is Duolingo. And then I'm sure that there are some groups online where you can join and learn and practice Scandinavian languages, or come into our group, because there's lots of people who are learning and would like to learn and like to practice their Norwegian, Swedish, Danish, Finnish, dare I say it, although that's a very difficult one. What are some popular Scandinavian foods in the US? Scandinavian cuisine remains popular. Now, I can testify to this because on my blog, I am always publishing traditional Nordic recipes, not just Norwegian, although I focus a lot on Norwegian, I have to say, because I live here. But Nordic recipes generally. And I do like to go for the traditional ones because I think they're the ones that are culturally very important. We can constantly create new fusion cuisine and mashups of things, but the traditional recipes are the ones that are seasonal and the ones that stay the test of time. And I know they're always popular, some of them hugely popular. But this is especially true in the Midwest communities there, where traditional dishes like lutefisk, lefse, hands up who makes lefse at Christmas, krumkaka, Swedish meatballs and Danish pastries are really enjoyed. Many Scandinavian bakeries and restaurants continue to serve these favourites. Good. Keeping Nordic culinary traditions alive in the US. They're still alive here, so if you're worried that they're kind of dying out wherever you are, don't fret. People are still eating Nordic cuisine. And if you want to make some of your own, come over and have a look on my blog, because you'll find so many lovely recipes that you can try yourself. So whether through folk music, holiday celebrations or historic sites, Scandinavian influence continues to shape American culture. These cities offer visitors and residents alike a chance to experience authentic Nordic traditions. And if you want to explore Scandinavian heritage in the US, these are the best places to start. And I will speak to you and see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.